And once the glue is dry, I could take that apart. And you can see the white spacer pieces aren't glued together at all. And then I have the center ring. And you can see how it goes on the bowl. And it seems to be about right size-wise. And I could sand all of the surfaces that are going to be glued. So the ring and then the two halves of the bowl. Now I was going to want to clamp this with the rim of the bowl down on the table. So I wanted to shorten my center ring just a little bit so it would be even with the rim of the bowl. So I cut off some length of that and then sanded that top edge. Which I really didn't need to do, but I got it really even. And then I could do the final glue with the three pieces of the bowl. Like I said before, the center section is going to dictate the section of the bowl. That's going to be the shape of the bowl. That's where there's material. So I had to get that glued in relation to the two halves exactly right so that I would have a bowl to find within that material. And I can take the clamps off. So this is actually the project, was building up this shape. So now it's just a matter of turning this down into a bowl. I started with the bottom of the bowl, making the tenon for the chuck. I figured that because there was a little bit of a wobble to the bowl, I would make the rim centered and then turn that wobble out on the bottom. So that when I flip the bowl around and put the smaller chuck on, the bowl will be centered around the rim. And that wobble can be taken out in the base where there's more thickness to take up that wobble, if that makes sense. So once I had the bowl turned around and really ready to turn, it was fairly well balanced. One thing that I hadn't realized at all before putting it on the lathe was that the Padauk is a lot heavier than the walnut, so that the actual weight of the bowl was off balance. It was nice and round, but it would definitely fall to the Padauk side. So I couldn't go real fast with the speed on the lathe. I turned the outside first, starting at the rim and then working back towards the base. It doesn't really matter a whole lot, but that felt like what made sense. I did want to get the outside round before I really started working on the inside. And I used the scraper towards the end to get a smoother finish on the outside. With that center ring, I could basically just work towards the shape of that centerpiece, because that's what was going to dictate the section of the bowl. And then I could work on the rim, get that flat. Then I could start working on the inside. There was a lot of material to remove on the inside, but it went smoothly. And I used the scraper to smooth the surface on the inside. And I could finalize the rim. I pushed the angle of the rim in so that it's higher on the outside and then lower on the inside. Then a bunch of sanding. I think I started at 60 grit and went all the way to 600. And with sanding, I find that the first grit is the hardest because you're sort of getting to the final shape of the bowl. Once you've got it all right with the coarsest grit, then it goes fairly easy going through the other grits. Really, you're just taking out the scratches from the previous grit. And then the bowl was basically done, and I turned it around again so that I could work on the bottom. With the bottom, I'd been a little bit nervous. Because of that center ring, I didn't have a whole lot of material to work with to make the bottom of the bowl. So I just removed the extra material and brought the curve of the bowl around to the bottom, following the shape of that center ring. And then with the actual bottom, I didn't cut in and make an indent in the bottom. I just sanded off the extra nubbin and just made a flat bottom for the bowl. which is a little bit tricky because I didn't really have any reference on the disc sander as to what was level. So it was a matter of sanding it a little bit and then sort of checking it to see if it would sit right, and then sanding a little more and sort of going back and forth doing that a few times. But it seemed to work. And then I put my mark on the bottom. I was going to put it in the center on the Paduke, but I tested a piece and it kind of just gets lost on the darker Paduke. So I put it on the walnut where it shows up a lot better. And then some finish, and it started to look really nice at this point. So it worked. There was a lot of things that I hadn't done on this bowl, and I like the way it came out. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And it's one of the big reasons why I built the CNC machine, was to build segmented pieces for wood turning. I think it opens up a whole different set of things that you can do. So it's not just straight segments anymore with straight designs. Thanks for watching.